First, let me thank you again for taking time to be here. As a Baptist preacher, when I get a crowd together like this, the temptation to preach becomes almost irresistible. Where are the ushers? We got the collection plate. I wanted to seriously though take a minute and just add a few more items to this list for you. When people ask you, why are you supporting Bernie Sanders? I want you to be able to give a clear answer to that question. I would suggest that you say, I support Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders supports me. And if they ask, what does that mean? Tell them that Bernie Sanders stands against income inequity in this country. That he wants to put an end to the concentration of wealth that has occurred in this country over the last 40 years. He wants to bring that to an end so that you and I, the rest of us, can enjoy an increase in our salaries and our quality of life. You need to understand this morning that if you go back to 1980, salaries in this country have been flat when adjusted for inflation. That 100% of all new income has gone to the top 1% of the population since 1980. This concentration of wealth is so staggering that when you take a family like the Walton family, the Walmart family, their collective wealth for just that one family equals more than the income of the combined 40% of the lower end of the population. One family. Their wealth exceeds 40% of the lower end of our population's income. That's just an example of how extreme this issue has become. So when people say, well, he's a socialist, well, I say, well, he's in good company. He's in good company because Franklin Delano Roosevelt, they called him a socialist too. And he created Social Security. Yeah. They called Lyndon Johnson a socialist. He created Medicaid. Okay? So when people start talking about doing anything for us, it's socialism. We must run from that. Well, you notice they didn't call it socialist when they took all those billions of dollars and bailed out those corporations. Your tax dollars. That wasn't socialism. That was expediency. I want you to be clear that when it comes to helping you and me, the Republicans and the conservatives will quickly say socialism. Yeah. But when it comes to giving your dollars to corporations, it's economic development. I say the best form of economic development is to support families. Yeah. Don't you? And when we make sure that families could have a decent wage, Bernie asked for what, $15 minimum wage? $15. That would be, for me, a godsend. Mm-hmm. Some of these ladies and gentlemen you see working in here right now, they don't even make minimum wage. Nope. In South Carolina, it's $2.35 for people who work as waiters and waitresses. That's right. They don't even get minimum wage. They have to survive on tips. So when you get ready to leave a tip. That's right. And I applaud Bernie's courage for saying that. Yeah. Because the other side is saying, well, if you do that, people are going to lose jobs. Well, that's not true. Mm-mm. What it means is that mother who's working 2 or 3 jobs can now work one. Mm-hmm. and take better care of her children. It means that father who's struggling because he's working 20 and 30 hours a week can at least make enough to care for his family. Let me go on and tell you this. When the folk ask you why you're supporting Bernie Sanders, I want you to be able to say, I'm supporting Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders has a vision for America. And that vision for America includes me. When he says, we've got to reinstate Glass-Steagall. Now, I noticed when Mr. Jellison called Glass-Steagall, some of your eyes kind of glassed over. Because you're not quite sure what that means. Yeah. I want you to leave here knowing what Glass-Steagall is. Yeah. Glass-Steagall is an act that was passed in 1939, signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It is an act that put limitations on Wall Street, banks, insurance companies, so that they could not speculate, gamble in the marketplace. And when, in 1999, Bill Clinton signed the bill that gutted Glass-Steagall, it allowed for the collapse that we saw in 2007, 2008, through the recession, the bursting of the real estate bubble. The bubble itself was a creation of the gutting of Glass-Steagall. So I want you to be able to say, corporations need to be held accountable.
Yes.
And that's what Glass-Steagall does. When they tell you that the company's too big to fail, Glass-Steagall's answer to that would have been, let's break them up.
Okay. Yes.
They're too big, let's break them up. But without Glass-Steagall and its teeth, there's nothing to hold these corporations accountable. And Bernie Sanders has said, we've got to put more accountability back in. They've got to be held accountable for what they do. Amen?
Amen. Amen.
Once that's done, then we can begin to talk about health care. Now, you here in South Carolina with me. Thank God for the Affordable Care Act.
Yes.
It has been a godsend, but guess what? The blessings don't extend to everybody. Here in South Carolina, we have more than 200,000 people who are not covered by the Affordable Care Act because their incomes don't qualify. And because their incomes don't qualify, they fall in that area where they make too much to qualify for the Affordable Care Act, but not enough to afford coverage for themselves. That no man's land. And as a result, that 200,000+ people in South Carolina without any access to health care are in danger. There's a report issued by a group called the RAND Foundation last year that said, in South Carolina, we can expect upward of 1,500 people a year to die who are not covered by health care in South Carolina. And those are numbers that ought to disturb all of us. When our governor says, we're not going to take the federal dollar to expand Medicaid, she turned down $11 billion. That was the third highest amount for health care expansion going to any state. Turned it down. Turned down 44,000 jobs in a state who was having an unemployment rate at the time of almost 8%. And here we are today with people who have no options for health care but the emergency room. And just in case you think the emergency room is a good option, you should know that hospitals are now moving to do some things that are very interesting to watch. That many of them are implementing changes, a policy now called stabilize and send home. So if you were in an accident, you have a heart attack, you have a stroke, they may well stabilize you and send you home, which is what? A prescription to die. Because they're not willing, long term under the Affordable Care Act, to absorb that cost, because as the Affordable Care Act ages, the amount of money coming back to the hospitals is what? Going down. Okay? So they're making plans to protect their financial interests. You should be aware of that. But what Bernie Sanders said is, look, health care ought to be a right. You ought to have a right to have access to care. And so he's calling for moving forward from where the Affordable Care Act is to Medicare for everybody. That's what it should have been to start with. Medicare what? For everybody. And if you know anything about Medicare, that's government single payer. Right? You don't have to worry about insurance company. You don't have to worry about all of this rigmarole. You got coverage, you walk into your doctor's office, he takes your little red, white, and blue card and says, go right in. That's right. Well, right now, Obamacare is what we have. And it is there because it was the only thing that could get through at the time. But that doesn't mean we need to stop and say this is all we can do. Am I right about it?
That's right.
Amen.
Let me get to this. this one point, because one of the things you're going to hear from the opponents of Bernie Sanders is this. They're going to say, you know, he wants a revolution. Hillary wants to be that entity that evolves slow change, incremental change. Well, I remember when I was young, in the civil rights movement, when the right wing opposing civil rights would say, we just need to take incremental steps on your freedom. You know, we don't need to go all out. We need to, you know, maybe we'll let you vote in the next 10 years.
That's right.
And then next time we may let you do a little more.
That's right.
You know, incremental change. Well, let me be honest with you. If the civil rights movement had taken that approach, we still wouldn't be voting.
No, that's right. No.
Am I right about that? Sometimes, just sometimes, you gotta have a backbone. You gotta have values that propel you to stand up and say, this is what is right, this is what I stand for, and be willing to fight for it.
Yes.
In spite of that.
Yes.
What worries me is that sometimes our leadership gets blinded into saying, well, we're the minority, so we don't need to fight. We need to accommodate.
No.
We need to acquiesce.
No.
You know, one of the problems we had in the Clinton administration, in my view, looking backward, is that many of the policies that came out of Bill Clinton's administration were what I call Republican light.
Yeah.
They were the same Republican policies being pushed by the far right, just tweaked a little bit. But they still had the same devastating impact on our communities. Mass incarceration.
Yes.
You know, now Bill Clinton a while back apologized for that. But let me be clear. After millions of our people have gone to jail, families destroyed, communities devastated. Sometimes an apology just ain't enough.
No.
When we talk about the kinds of issues that are consuming our communities, when we talk about healthcare, when we talk about education, you know, there are policies that we have faced in the 80s and 90s and 2000s that have now come clear to us as failures on the part of leadership to fight appropriately. One of the things that I look forward to is having a president who'll stand up to the Republican Party and say, like David to Goliath, this is what is right, and I'm going to stand for what is right. I want a president who will use the presidency as a bully pulpit and preach to this country, educate them about what is right and just and possible.
Yes, sir.
Until people are educated enough to understand that if we keep going the way that we're going, this country is going to be a plutocracy.
Yes.
Ruled by rich
Yes.
folks.
Yes.
It's almost there.
Yes.
So while we still have yet a chance
Yeah.
to save ourselves,
See that.
we need to get a thumb in our back, stand up, speak truth to power,
Yes.
and say, this is the best that we have,
Yes.
Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
We need to say to anybody who will listen,
Yes.
I hope that you agree with me. I hope that you will leave here prepared to preach this gospel
Fine.
to anybody that will listen. There are those who are angry that some of us are not supporting Hillary. And look, I don't want to say anything about Hillary personally because I don't have a personal criticism to make. Okay? If she happens to win the nomination, I will work for her. Because let's be clear, she's a whole lot better than the Republican Party. Okay? But in this primary season,
That's
when
right.
I have a choice
That's right.
between good and better,
That's right.
I'm going with better.
Yes.
So I thank you all again for being here. I ask you again, one more time, leave here in an evangelical spirit,
Yes.
preaching the good news
Yes, sir.
of
Yes.
Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
Amen?
Amen.
Thank you.
I'm Virginia Sanders. I'm working with the Bernie Sanders campaign.
That's her cousin.
Don't listen to Joe.
It's his other wife.
Anyway, I heard Mr. Jealous talking about what was said about Bernie not being a part of the civil rights movement. And it brought something back to mind. I was born in Sumter, straight down that way, okay? And I can remember as a child when Barry Goldwater was running for the presidency. Hillary Clinton was working for Barry Goldwater,
That's right.
who was a horrible Republican. And let me tell you what the slogan was. I don't know if this slogan was all over the United States, but in that black neighborhood where I lived, every adult and every child said it. Gold water, cold water, bread and water. That's what was going to happen to us if Barry Goldwater became president. And Hillary Clinton was on the Goldwater campaign. I'm 73 years old, and I'll never forget that slogan. Never forget that slogan. And I don't think she's changed that much. That's just my opinion since. She's just changed to expedite her riches. And I hate the fact that the Clintons have taken black people for granted. If you don't want to get this old woman riled up, don't take me for granted. And every time I hear those talking heads on television talk about how South Carolina is sold up for the Clintons, I get up and start calling people again to come and work on the campaign. Work on the campaign. And I'm up here to tell you all, our office, the Bernie Sanders campaign headquarters, is located at 2145 Bull Street. It's nothing fabulous. It's a little gray house located right on Bull Street on the corner of Bull and Jefferson. We don't have any big neon signs that blink and flash saying Bernie Sanders. In fact, we don't have any big signs. When we moved into that office, I think a couple of days after Mr. Moore and I got the office, we took yard signs and put it all out in the yard. We taped other little smaller signs in the window because we don't have a big budget, because Senator Sanders doesn't take money from the 1% and he doesn't take money from corporations. He's unbought and unbossed. Okay?
Right.
Unbought and unbossed. We want in the presidency working for us. That's the person we want in there working for us. I'm not much at following leaders either. If any of you know me, I'm always on the opposite side of the house. So please, we need people to do door-to-door canvassing. We need people to do telephone banking. We even have 3 ladies, older ladies, I'm saying older, I'm probably older than they are, who comes in and shred papers, okay? You come, we'll find something for you to do. And Joe was talking about the affordable care. I was in, this person over here chewing is Brett Bursey. I think he's older than I am, though. But anyway, Brett is the head of the South Carolina Progressive Network, of which I'm co-chair, one of the co-chairs. And we kicked off the affordable care when it came to me. And something that will never leave me. I went around the state navigating, signing people up for the affordable care. Because 10 years earlier, my husband and I had gotten in a bind financially because of health care. My husband got sick when he was in his 50s. We had two insurances, health care insurances, two separate Blue Cross Blue Shield federal policies, which everybody said was so good that we would never have to worry about it. After his being ill for 3 years, we ended up in $25,000 worth of medical debt with two insurances. So when the Affordable Care Act came to be, this old lady said she was going to be a navigator. So I stayed up until 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. By then my husband had died. The dog and I would talk to him and he would bark back at me when I was trying to pass that test. But I passed that test and I became a navigator. We would go to some places. I know we went to Cowley, South Carolina one Saturday morning. All of these people were gathered in this little church. We had about 30 people in that little church. They had the ceiling fans on and everything. Everybody was in anticipation of getting health care insurance. The problem being, of those 25 or 30 people, only about 3 or 4 got health care insurance. All of them were working. But they all, even though they were working, a lot of them were working 2 jobs, their income and the number of dependents they had did not qualify them because the level was $11,500. So of all those people in that room, I had to tell, I'm sorry, you do not qualify for the affordable care. But, and they said, but the president said we could get insurance. The president wanted you to have insurance. But your governor and your state legislators wouldn't take the money. So here's a piece of paper with your governor's telephone number on it. First thing Monday morning, call her. Call her. I would go into areas where there were white people. And the first thing they would say to me when I got there was, now if you come in here to give me that Obamacare, I don't want it. But if you can sign me up for the affordable care, I'll take it. And I would tell them, sit down, sister. I got something to explain to you. But that just goes to show how much education is needed in South Carolina. That just goes to show how much education is needed. So I'm saying all this to tell all of us. All of us has a duty and responsibility to get out there and educate the people if we want to change. Change doesn't happen by itself. I'm a child of the civil rights movement. And that changed. I had people in my family when I was being pushed and kicked and arrested. I know we weren't arrested in Sumter, but when I was protesting and picketing, who would tell me, stop making trouble. Stop making trouble for us. They saw the civil rights movement as making trouble. And to an extent, when I'm talking to people on the telephone right now, there are people who tells us that we're voting for Hillary and we like it the way things are. They're in the minority, but I've heard that. So please, 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 come down to our little gray office on the corner of Bull and and Jefferson, and help us make this change. Because I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime change that can happen if we all stick together and bring it forward. So thank you. Thank you. And let me give you my telephone number. This old lady